Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lysha and I'm the owner of Lysha Be Creative. In today's video, we're going to be making this really cute sort of half split and glitter design ready for summer with that sweet summertime decals right on the front. So of course, everything I use in today's video will be listed and linked down in the description box, as well as any discount codes that I have for you. So definitely make sure to check that out. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial. All right, so I am starting off with a 20-ounce hog tumbler. This is a straight tumbler. I've already gone in with the center section with a twist. That's a Colorshot gloss color. I'll list out the spray paint colors I'm using right here, but what I'm trying to do is create sort of like a 3-color ombre right in the center here. So I don't often get to see or really put in my videos my spray painting process, especially since it's been so cold. But now that the weather is getting a little bit nicer, I'm hoping to be able to include that in a lot of the videos, especially for those of you that may struggle with the spray painting process. So my process is always holding the can 8 to 10 inches away from my actual cup and going back and forth in those sections. You'll see I don't use the color just one time. I usually go back and forth with each color 2 or 3 times to get the perfect blend. And there's a lot of tilting and maneuvering of my cup versus maneuvering of the can to get the spray paint to land exactly where I want it to. This is definitely a lot of trial and trial and error, if you will, when it comes to the spray painting process, but definitely going in those short spurts farther away from your cup is really able to help blend those colors a little bit better than that continuous spray painting look that you might get when you are sort of dead on to the cup. So with my cup spray painted with those colors right there, we're going to go ahead and frame and cut out our vinyl to frame that center section that says summer loading. I really want that to be sort of the focal point of the back part of this cup here. And so the first thing I want to do before I can go ahead and get my vinyl cut is I'm going to just eyeball the halfway point of the tumbler here, taking a little bit of painter's tape to sort of cord that off or section that section off. That way I'm able to determine how much of the vinyl I'll actually need to use and salvage any of that other vinyl for other projects I might sort of get into later. So again, I really want to be able to utilize the section that says summer loading. I wanted that to kind of be the middle part of my cup. So I'm going to chop off sort of like the end 2 inches or so, because I don't need a whole lot of vinyl on this cup. And so I'm going to kind of cut off that section there. We'll actually use that section that I'm trimming off here for a circle on the bottom of the tumbler. And then I'm just going to cut off all of the white edges. That way I'm then able to really get a nice even section that I'll use for the back half of this cup. So no real technique here, of course, but that was kind of my idea. I wanted to kind of utilize as much of the vinyl as I could, as much of the pieces, elements of the vinyl, but also because that summer loading piece was like right there, I couldn't cut that off and not have that part of the design. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the exact measurements that I need, giving myself a little bit of overlap on either side of the tumbler, of course. That way, in case I really sort of don't do very well with applying this vinyl, which certainly has happened. You guys have seen me do that in tutorials where I think I've got it, and it turns out that even vinyl sometimes gives me a little bit of a tough time. But now that I've got most of my vinyl where I want it and how much of that I'm going to need, I'm going to go ahead and start to roll this piece of vinyl onto my cup. So I like to place my cup in my cup cradle, as you guys have seen before, and I like to then just sort of adhere and anchor one section of the vinyl right on top of that painter's tape line. We'll go back and cut that section off, of course, but I like to sort of line that up right on top of the vinyl. That way I can make sure it's a really straight edge, and then I'll just go back and trim any of that up that I need to in order to obviously be able to remove the tape without any issue. So once I've gotten 1 sort of inch of the vinyl anchored, I'm going to go ahead and sort of roll the rest of this piece of vinyl on. I will say that the smaller pieces of vinyl that you use, for whatever reason, give me a little bit more of a tougher time when I'm trying to roll them. A full vinyl wrap is always so much easier than sometimes some of these smaller sections, just because the backing is not usually as sort of malleable or flexible when you're using with smaller pieces. I'm not really sure why that is, but I definitely would prefer to roll my vinyl on versus removing all of the backing and then just sort of having faith in sticking it, because I know that it would go on crooked and just not look right. So I'm going to take my squeegee tool now and kind of just squeeze out any air and adjust any wrinkles that I might have on my design, making sure that everything really looks really flawless, and then focus on the bottom, pulling tautly over the bottom edge of that cup. The vinyl, this is a really stretchy vinyl, so I'm really able to stretch that pretty nicely without risking of ripping it. And then of course we'll take our craft knife and go ahead and get everything trimmed up to how we need it. So starting with the top rim, just running my craft knife around the top edge, removing that extra section. And then for the bottom section here, I typically will just use a piece of painter's tape along the bottom to just sort of be my barrier or line in order to be able to cut that edge nice and straight. Certainly if you have a cup edging tool, that's a really handy tool to use when it comes to trimming up the bottom edge of your vinyl and even the top edge, but I like my vinyl to go all the way to the top of my cup. I don't like there to be any gap there unless I'm doing a design that would need for me to have a gap, but certainly whatever works for you. I have just been resorting to using painter's tape and a craft knife. It just seems to be the easiest way to get the job done. But certainly using any of those handy dandy tools we have now is definitely another way that you can get this all trimmed up nice and quickly. So let's go ahead and jump over to getting this tape removed here, of course. So once I've gotten this all trimmed off the bottom section, I'm going to remove the tape off the sides of the vinyl, and then I will repurpose that tape and utilize that to cover up the edges of my vinyl that are on either side. That way we can protect the vinyl for when I go into glittering the other half and the bottom section of this cup. So whatever works for you, if you want to use a new piece of tape, old piece of tape, doesn't really matter. You will notice too that as I'm removing the tape here that some of my spray paint did get lifted. If this happens to you and you're nervous about not getting full coverage with your glitter, you certainly could take this back outside after you've sort of sectioned off the vinyl with tape and maybe a little bit of saran wrap or plastic wrap to kind of cover that up. You could go back out and re-spray paint. I was pretty content with knowing that I had, some of that spray paint was removed. I was pretty fine with just glittering over it because most of my glitters were pretty opaque in the sense of none of them were super translucent that I would worry that we'd be able to see the stainless steel that's exposed underneath that color. But depending on what paint or what glitter you're using, I should say, you might want to save your spray painting till after you've gotten the vinyl on or do 2 layers of spray paint. And that will help certainly make sure that your tape doesn't end up pulling up any of your spray paint before you go into the glitter process. So I've got this all sort of sectioned off the way I need it to, and we're going to go ahead and use the epoxy method glitter application to apply all of my glitters. So just a little bit of epoxy goes a long way. I am using Flynn Sisters Premium Epoxy here. And I'm just going to take less than 2 mLs of epoxy and really just get that all over the section of my cup that's exposed. So taking just my gloved hand and making sure I'm going from rim to rim, making sure that everything is nicely coated in that epoxy and that there aren't any dry bits anywhere. And then we'll be able to get into the process of glittering here. So these are all the glitters that I'm going to be using for today's video and for this section here. I'm going to start off with my chunkies, of course, first. So I'm going to start with my green chunky first and sort of lay the land or landscape, if you will, of where all my colors are going to line up. I don't start to blend though until I get into the finer cuts of color. I just find that I'm able to get a lot of dimension with my chunky cuts, but trying to blend those is not as easy as blending with my finer cuts of color. So my chunky cuts sort of always serve as sort of like the blueprint for the way that all of the colors will lay. But then my finer cuts or my smaller cuts of glitter is where I'm really going to utilize to be able to blend into the different sections to kind of give that flawless ombre look. So I've gone in with my chunky pink, and now that's my final chunky color there, and we're going to go in with our finer cuts of matching colors. Again, all of these are listed and linked down in the description box, so you can certainly find the direct links to finding these glitters if you'd like to recreate this design, or if these glitters really stand out to you and you want to utilize these for other designs possibly. So in with our finer cut of blue here as well as this navy blue. I just love, love, love. I don't know what it is, but navy blue has been like my favorite color. I know it's not really a summer color, but I don't know what it is about navy blue lately. It's just been one of navy blue and pink have really just been like I've been stuck on lately, I would say. So a really pretty combination, I think, with this blue, this navy blue, this sort of bright green, and then this pink as well, kind of just all comes together. It also complements the vinyl really well. Whenever you're trying to pair vinyl with glitter, I always say to, find glitters that sort of complement and match your vinyl. It doesn't have to be exactly the colors that are sort of dominant, but definitely make sure to pick out colors that sort of complement your vinyl. So I could have gone a lot of different ways with this vinyl specifically because there are so many different colors on this vinyl that you just couldn't go wrong. But I decided to kind of go with sort of these non-traditional but almost watermelon colored look, but then throw in that navy blue to kind of just give it a different kind of vibe. I still do think it certainly screams summer to me, and I'm really excited because I'm actually creating this cup for a swap that is upcoming in a group that I'm in. So I'm really excited to whoever ends up receiving this. I think that they're going to love it. So once I've removed the tape, I did put this on the turner for 2 coats of epoxy. You guys know that I always use Flynn Sisters Premium Epoxy. That's been what I've been gravitating towards as of late. And so I did 2 coats of epoxy, and that was about 30 mLs in my first coat, and then I did about 20 mLs in my second coat, and now we're ready to sand. So most of the sanding was just the top rim, a little bit of the bottom rim. So I'm going over the top rim with a 60 grit sanding block, really kind of a rough sand there, making sure I can create that fine line of stainless steel so for our final coats of epoxy to adhere to. And then on the bottom, I'm going to switch it up and just very gently go around this with a 100 grit sanding block. Because I only have the 2 coats of epoxy on here, I want to make sure that I don't use too coarse of a grit whatsoever, because that will then sort of, if I do go a little too rough on here, I have been known to sand through my layers of epoxy and my glitter and expose the stainless steel. So I wanted to be mindful of that. Since it didn't need too rough of a sand, I went in with a 100 grit of sand block versus doing a sort of coarser grit like a 60 or 80. We're going to go ahead and clean this off with some 91% rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. Get this nice and kind of cleaned up of all of that sanding debris before we get into applying our decals. So these are my decals here. I did go into Cricut Design Space and go ahead and get everything ready. I will link the decal that I'm using today in the description box, of course, and all the different vinyls that I use, most of which is Oracle vinyl, but you'll also notice I have a sort of holographic vinyl and a watermelon print vinyl that I cut on a printed vinyl sheet. And so you're just seeing me now layer my vinyl for that sweet summertime decal that I was able to find off of Creative Fabrica. So we're going to go ahead and start with the bottom section here. I just have a 2-inch circle that I used a circle punch to be able to sort of cut in and or out of the original vinyl that we used. So I used that scrap piece there. Then we're going to go ahead and frame out our vinyl with some washi tape. This is just some blue metallic washi tape. It's literally my favorite pack of washi tape. I always tend to grab when I'm at Hobby Lobby. That is also linked down in the description box. Comes in a couple of variations and colors. But we're going to use this light blue to sort of frame everything out here before we get into applying the front decal on the front half of this cup here. So I really am already starting to love how this comes together. This is one of those cups that I just love how it all just sort of flows together. I don't even know if that is really coming through like what I mean, but I'm always in sort of in awe or in complete enjoyment when I'm able to take a piece of vinyl and some complementary colors and then, a really, really rather simple decal, nothing too crazy, and just create a really beautiful piece, right? And so everybody deserves to have a summer cup, and I just love being able to create really fun designs for every occasion, every weather, right? Everything that you're kind of feeling, because you know what? You don't need to just have one cup. You need to have 25 like I do in my cabinet that I use regularly. So now we're going to go ahead and layer this vinyl here. So this is my decal here. We're going to go ahead and anchor one side now that I feel like it looks to be about in the center section of the cup on this back side here, right over this glitter section. And then we're going to go ahead and remove the rest of the backing off of this. And then of course, using the hinge method, we're going to go ahead and get this applied to the cup. So this struggle, I did struggle a little bit here because I had only gotten the top corner anchored. I thought I had one full like section on the edge anchored and it wasn't. So it got a little bit stuck, but I was able to redeem myself thankfully and not have to go back to Cricut and recut the entire file because that would have made me a little bit sad. But I was able to get this onto the cup with a little bit of finesse here, and then just used my craft knife to fix my R that got a little bit crinkled. So once I'm able to get this adhered, I'll just go back with my craft knife and just fix the letter R after I've removed the transfer tape here, just to get that obviously placed and laid down flat and nicely. So thankfully I didn't have to go back to Cricut Design Space, but just when you think I'm done, we're gonna go ahead and of course apply the little sun piece that goes to this decal, but I'm also gonna add a couple of another additional element to this cup. So because this says Sweet Summertime and we kind of are going with like this watermelon theme, I'm gonna use a vinyl from Lysha Creations. It's a semi-transparent like watermelon popsicle vinyl. I've actually used this in a previous tutorial. And so I'm gonna sort of hand cut these out here and we're going to place them sort of surrounding the Sweet Summertime decal on this back side. I feel like this just continued to add to the overall summer themed design of this tumbler and really just complemented, of course, the decal Sweet Summertime on the back here. So once I've gotten my decals cut out, again, this is semi-transparent vinyl, which means that it's printed on a white base, but everything that shows up white is actually clear on the vinyl. Now that my decals are placed, of course, you know I'm going to go in with my 2 final coats of epoxy using Flynn Sisters, a premium epoxy. So I've mixed about 20 mLs for my first to last second coat, and then I'll go in with another 20 mLs to finish. And here's a final look at the cup. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video and tutorial. If you enjoyed it, definitely be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And you guys know that I'll see you again in the next one. Bye!